I'll make it rich, cinematic, emotional, and character-driven. The kind of story that feels like it belongs in the HFY universe. The first time the ships appeared above the clouds, the sky went silent. Birds scattered in confused spirals. The wind stilled, and every piece of sky-watching technology on Earth choked on static. There was no warning, no declaration, no radio signal. Just shadows. Shadows big enough to drown continents. The world government scrambled. Military radars lit up. Air forces scrambled. Fleets mobilized. Civilians watched with shaking hands and cheap phone cameras as the vast silhouettes drifted forward, blotting out blue, swallowing sunlight, casting whole nations into a strange dusk. Some prayed, others cursed. A few celebrated like fools, convinced the aliens would grant miracles. But those who had fought wars, bled in trenches, flown fighter jets, or carried stretchers through broken streets felt something deeper than fear. It was the old, primal instinct buried in human bones. Predators had arrived. When the first drop pods fell, they came like meteors. Thousands, burning scars across the sky. Cities braced for impact strikes, but the pods slowed at the last second, guided by invisible fields. They landed in clean spirals around industrial hubs, power grids, military installations, and orbital elevator construction sites. The pods opened with a hiss, and the monsters walked out. And one had expected them to be beautiful. They weren't grotesque either. They were wrong. Too tall, too smooth, skin like polished stone and ice. Their eyes reflecting everything with a cold disinterest. Their armor wasn't bolted or strapped. It grew from their bodies like bone. Their language sounded like broken glass dragged across frozen lakes. They didn't broadcast demands. They didn't ask humanity to surrender. They simply started harvesting metals, fuel, quantum cores, satellites, human infrastructure, human lives when necessary, efficient, detached. The invaders called themselves, eventually, the Calorian Ascendancy. Humanity did not care what they called themselves. On the ground, where bullets snapped and screamed, soldiers called them cold hearts. Captain Mara Ellison saw the first of them die. She had been pinned behind a crumbling wall outside Warsaw, a collapsed logistics hub smoldering around her. The war had erupted faster than any conflict in recorded history. Cities didn't fall. They were bypassed, fenced in, drained, and left kneeling like wounded animals. Mara's squad had been tasked with extraction of civilians trapped under rubble, which is the only mission left that still felt like hope. The Calorian unit arrived like ghosts. 6 of them. They did not open fire immediately. They studied. They calculated. One of the civilians screamed and ran. A blue shard of light carved him in half before the scream was finished. Something old and furious ignited in Mara. She leaned from cover and fired her rifle on full auto. Bullets, useless against shields, sparked like rain. But one round found a joint where bone armor met flesh. The alien jerked. It stumbled, and then it fell. Her heart hammered. Humanity could hurt them. Humanity could kill them. Word traveled across continents like wildfire carried by satellites and blood. Reports came in from mountain ambushes, from sewer tunnels, from militia hidden in forests, from submarine decks lurking beneath decimated ports. The monsters were not gods. They could bleed, but victory was expensive. For every alien corpse, whole platoons vanished. Cities burned more quietly now, starved by energy siphons instead of missiles. Drones stitched the sky in silent patrols. Calorian walkers strode through ruins collecting resources while ignoring most humans like ants scuttling near picnic crumbs. And yet humanity refused to kneel. Dr. Yusuke Tanaka, astrophysicist turned resistance analyst, pieced together the truth first. He studied debris, frequencies, captured fragments of alien tech that saboteurs risked their lives to steal. His conclusion chilled every general and leader who heard it. The Calorians had not traveled from distant stars to conquer humanity. They had risen from somewhere above Earth. From massive sky fortresses hidden beyond the atmosphere, anchored to gravitational ridges, always in the shadow of storms and permanent cloud formations. They had been there for years, maybe decades, cloaked, patient, waiting for a precise alignment of energy markets, global infrastructure, satellite networks. The moment humanity built enough technology to be worth stealing. Cold hearts, indeed, that in an underground bunker beneath the Alps, what was left of world leadership convened. Not presidents, not prime ministers, not the loudest faces on screens. Instead, logistics commanders, engineers, cyber war experts, resistance cell leaders, a few scientists, and the kind of officers who knew what loss tasted like. They did not discuss surrender. Not seriously. Every record humans had of alien demands, intercepted through messy, broken channels, showed no negotiation mechanism. No tribute, no coexistence. The Calorians didn't understand the concept. They acted like a force of nature that had learned calculus and cruelty as, oh, humanity did what it has always done when cornered. It became inventive, ugly, brilliant. They put aside grudges. Not perfectly. Nothing human is perfect, but enough. Former enemies shared ammunition caches. Rival companies opened their patents to volunteer engineers. Hackers in dim rooms across the world fought alongside aging generals with trembling hands. Mothers learned how to assemble field radios. Kids carried messages through rubble because they were small and fast and determined. War did not turn humans into heroes automatically. Some broke, some betrayed, some hoarded. But across the ashes, something stubborn burned brighter. Mara's squad was absorbed into the Polaris network, a resistance within the resistance composed of the most reckless and effective units. They didn't hold territory. They erased it. Rail lines, fuel depots feeding alien processing towers, shield pylons, everything that made the harvest more efficient. Mara discovered that the Calorians hated unpredictability. They despised noise, chaos, improvisation. Every time the Polaris struck, the aliens adapted flawlessly at first, then hesitated as if unable to process why humans would destroy their own infrastructure just to deny it to the enemy. One night, crouched in freezing mud near a demolished refinery, Mara laughed with a bitterness she could taste. "We're teaching them," she whispered, "teaching the monsters what being human means." Beside her, Sergeant Rivera spat. "Then let's make the lesson hurt." High above the world, on the sky fortresses themselves, something shifted. Calorian Archivist Commander Viral observed the data streams with a detachment that was not entirely honest. Their species prided itself on the absence of emotional interference, but there were layers beneath logic, ancient instincts carved into cold minds. Humanity fascinated Viral the way storms fascinated mathematicians. Violent, irregular, beautiful in a way that refused to be predicted. The harvest projections were falling below efficient thresholds. Losses were unacceptable. The council debated extermination scenarios. Viral proposed an alternative. Learn them. Understand the strange heat in their decision trees. Model it. Use it. The first capture operations escalated. Not to kill, to study. Humans vanished from war zones and woke restrained under white, humming lights, observed by alien instruments that dissected not just bodies, but memories. Some broke entirely. Some lied. Some laughed in the faces of their interrogators and spat blood on polished floors. Rumors spread across resistance channels about medical nightmares, about neural scanners, and cold questions asked by voices that never trembled. Rage grew. One of those taken was Dr. Yusuke Tanaka. The aliens probed his memories of stars, of equations scribbled on blackboards, of childhood afternoons staring up at clouds dreaming of what lay beyond. Viral watched as the human resisted by focusing on something small and absurd. The smell of coffee spilled on old notebooks, the warmth of his daughter's hand years ago when she was still alive. The machine flags displayed anomalies. Emotional interference. Signal noise. And yet, Yusuke answered calmly when asked about fortresses, reactors, human strategies. He gave the truth. but wrapped in context. He spoke of human music and literature, of the way humans tore themselves apart and rebuilt again. Viral concluded something shocking by Calorian standards. Humans could not be reduced to resource vectors. Back on Earth, Mara refused to accept Tanaka's loss. Polaris planned a mission that any rational strategist would call suicide. They would board one of the descending resource elevators, massive cables stretching from fortress to ground, hitching a ride upward through storms, past drones and security fields, into the belly of the sky monsters themselves. The goal was ridiculous. Rescue Tanaka, plant demolition charges on the anchor arrays, and, if possible, learn anything that could shift the war. The ascent was a nightmare. Lightning bit the cable. Drones shrieked. Men and women died silently, ripped into the clouds. Those who survived crawled upward as their fingers bled and lungs burned. At the top, the fortress interior was colder than any winter Mara had known. Corridors hummed with alien life. Lights pulsed like veins, and everything smelled faintly of ozone and sterilized fear. They moved like shadows, guided by stolen maps that were already outdated. Viral knew they were coming. Instead of eliminating them instantly, easily achieved with a venting sequence, Viral watched. The humans broke through security doors with brute force. They carried wounded without hesitation, slowing themselves. They whispered jokes, curse words, prayers. Inefficient, any algorithm would say. Inefficient and infuriatingly resilient. The moment Mara found Tanaka, strapped to a restraint cradle, thinner and pale but alive, something inside her unclenched. He smiled as if she had simply arrived late for coffee. "You took your time," he said softly. She cut him free. The alarm screamed. Calorian soldiers converged. The firefight that followed etched itself into every survivor's memory. Bullets slammed into shields. Plasma carved through cover. The fortress walls shook as charges detonated along auxiliary supports. Mara's team collapsed corridors, triggered gravitational misalignments, turned carefully balanced alien architecture into unstable mazes. Rivera died holding the rear, laughing even as fire consumed him. When the last door sealed, only 4 humans remained with Tanaka. Surrounded, cornered, out of ammunition, Viral stepped forward. The commander regarded the battered humans with a gaze that was almost curious. Dialogue protocole initiated. Mara expected demands for surrender. Instead, Viral asked a single question. Why do you destroy what you require to live? Mara's throat was raw. She tasted blood. Her answer came from somewhere deep. Because if we can't live free, we'd rather die on our own terms. Silence. The concept burned through Viral's neural lattice like a virus made of fire and winter. Freedom as a resource equal to energy. Sacrifice as strategic leverage. Death not as failure, but as message. The analysis spiraled beyond the bounds of Calorian doctrine. Viral made a decision that would be recorded in their archives as an anomaly bordering on treason. The commander shut down the kill order, deactivated the nearest squads, and opened a corridor. "Leave," Viral said. "This settlement will adjust course." Mara stared. "Why?" "Because you are expensive," Viral replied. "Not greedy, not cruel, cautious, perhaps something close to respect." The humans escaped through collapsing decks as explosions rippled outward. The charges they had placed were not enough to destroy the fortress, but they damaged its central harvester arrays beyond easy repair. From the ground, people looked up and saw one of the sky monsters falter, tilt, and drift away instead of looming overhead. A whisper spread across the world that we hurt them. Again, Tanaka shared everything he had learned. The Calorians were not demons. They were a civilization slowly freezing emotionally, having burned out their own capacity for empathy in the pursuit of perfect efficiency. They harvested because they no longer remembered what it meant to create. Cold hearts at war with entropy itself. Humanity did not romanticize them, but understanding changed the shape of strategy. Rather than fighting every battle head-on, humans leaned into the one weapon aliens couldn't quantify: unpredictability. Guerrilla campaigns that targeted morale rather than material. Broadcasts hijacked to play lullabies and laughter through fortress channels. False retreats followed by sudden humanitarian convoys. Sabotage disguised as generosity. The war grew stranger, uglier, less linear. The Calorians found themselves not just losing resources, but questioning their models. Some, like Viral, began running unauthorized simulations about coexistence. Alliances shared technology. Others wanted extermination more than ever. The final turning point came when humanity launched a coordinated global strike on the primary anchor nodes. Not to destroy all the fortresses, impossible, but to force them higher out of harvesting range while broadcasting a message in every frequency the aliens used. We are not your crops. We are not your machines. If you come again, you will pay in blood and chaos forever. The message was not poetic. It was human. For 3 days, the sky burned with defensive fire. Shields cracked. Cities trembled. Millions près. And then, slowly, unbelievably, the shadows withdrew. Not vanishing entirely, not defeated, but retreating into the higher layers of cloud and orbital shadows, where equipment could not easily scan. Watching, thinking, years later, children would ask veterans whether humanity won the war. Mara, older now, scarred, would shake her head. We didn't win. We survived, and made them think twice. Tanaka would add quietly that perhaps, in some distant ledger written in alien script, the day might come when the Calorians return not as monsters, but as something closer to allies. Because humans had taught them a lesson colder and fiercer than any weapon. Hearts can freeze, but they can also burn. And on a world scarred yet stubbornly alive, the sky no longer felt like an enemy. Only a mystery waiting, as always, beyond the clouds.